Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about specifically what it means to have your Venus in Scorpio or Venus in the 8th house. My name is Brandon. This is part of a much larger video series that I'm doing here on YouTube where I go over every single planet and every single sign and house. I've gone over everything prior to Scorpio in the 8th house, so I have every single video for everything between Aries and Libra, or the 1st and the 7th house. So that would be the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So feel free to check those out if you have any of those placements. And this is the video specific to Venus in Scorpio as well as Venus in the 8th house. So down below, I'm going to have a playlist that will tell you all those videos, all those things. But in addition to that, I'm also going to have some links down there for you to check out your chart if you don't know if you even have your Venus in Scorpio or anything of that nature, and kind of what is this man talking about? What's going on, right? So there's a video down there, or not a video, a link down there for you to check out as well. Now, with Venus in Scorpio, we're going to talk about Venus first. We're going to have a little portion where we talk about Venus, then Venus in Scorpio, and then Venus in the 8th house. So if you have your Venus in Scorpio but not in the 8th house or vice versa, you can check those parts out down in the timestamps below. And if you already know about Venus in astrology, you don't really want to hear me yap any more than I already do, you are welcome to just skip to whatever portion that you have. So I am going to talk a little bit about Venus beforehand, like I said. And of course, if you guys are interested in anything with me, feel free to check me out below and reach out to me. And I'd love to hear you and your story about what your Venus in Scorpio, Venus in the 8th house has been. And I look forward to hearing what you guys think. So I'll see you guys in the next part where we talk about specifically what Venus means in astrology. So Venus in astrology has a very beautiful, positive, supportive way of looking at things. Venus is all about our relationships. It's about how we love. It's about how we care for ourselves, how we care for others, how we attract things, right? Because Venus is more of the feminine, the receptive energy. Mars is more of the kind of masculine or the pursuant energy. So we think about the Venus and Mars dance as something related to what do I want versus how do I get it, or how do I go after what I want, right? How do I pursue it? So there's that kind of dance on the cat and mouse that kind of comes with Venus and Mars energy. So when we talk about Venus, we're going to have to talk about Mars as well. So it's really important to know what your Venus and Mars placements are to see how your own relationship dynamics, as well as your values, as well as your desires, are kind of all interwoven, and how you're kind of connecting those two areas. So it's important to kind of see how that is here. Venus by house placement as well as by sign is going to show an area of life that you're going to want to feel loved in, that you already feel loved in, that you feel valued in, and kind of really work towards that value kind of building, essentially. And so just be aware that that is something that Venus is really about, bringing in value, bringing in money, bringing in worth, bringing in things that are, showing you what your value is, because Venus naturally rules Taurus and Libra, which is the signs relative to one's self-worth, one's resources, one's physical assets, one's physical value, one's morals, one's ethics. All of those things are ruled by Taurus. And then the Libra side of things, with Venus and Libra, this is going to be all the relationships, who we relate to, what type of relationships we want, what type of partner do we want, what do we really love in a person, right? That's the more of the social kind of way that Venus shows up. So Venus rules both Taurus and Libra, and therefore it is considered to be in detriment or in exile in the signs opposite of that, which is going to be Venus in a Martian-ruled sign, which is either Venus in Aries or Venus in Scorpio. So this is opposite one of Venus's domiciles. So this is Venus in a Martian sign here for this particular video. Venus is also considered to be exalted in the sign of Pisces, where it does quite well, and then considered to be opposite that as fallen in the sign of Virgo, which I've done that video as well. So the only other Venus kind of dignity video I have not done is Venus in Pisces. So this is another Venus in its own, in some sort of dignity and some sort of, I don't want to say extreme. Well, it is extreme with Venus in Scorpio, but it's something that there's these kind of parallels that we'll tend to see, or these kind of like back and forth, this mirroring aspect when we think about Venus and Martian signs. And that's why the dance between Venus and Mars is quite important when it comes to understanding your Venus placement, and especially if you have this one in particular, Venus in Scorpio, you're going to have Venus in a house of Mars, and so, or in a sign of Mars rather. So it's going to be something that is going to merge those energies quite intensely, and because of that, there's that kind of back and forth desire, and how you get it are going to be kind of a very interesting thing. The Venus in Scorpio video has been one that I have been quite, I don't want to say reluctant to get to, but there are going to be some things in this particular video that are going to be trigger warnings. I'm just kind of letting you know. There will be mentions of like SA and yeah, mainly mentions of SA, yeah, and things related to that. So just be aware that that's something that will come up with this particular video as we move forward. I hope you're watching this before we talk about Venus and Scorpio, but I'll do the trigger warning as well in the Venus and Scorpio portion, just because I think it's important, because Venus is it's a very sweet planet. It's a very like naturally soft planet. And it really cares about really beautifying things. It rules beauty, it rules aesthetics, it rules art, it rules law in some sort of way as well, connection to that kind of Libra side of things. It rules contracts, it rules our money, our resources, our value, our worth, our morals, our ethics, all those things that I've spoken about. And so Venus really is a quite a beautiful planet, a really nice planet. It's considered to be a more obviously more beneficial planet than most. It's the smaller of the two benefics. However, if you were born at night, this Venus placement is going to have more of a relevance. So for example, if you actually have your sun lower to the horizon, as in any of the houses 1 to 7, you're going to be considered to be a night chart, meaning you're born at night, and that Venus then has a little bit more power in what it's going to give you, and that Venus becomes more prominent. And then obviously if you have your sun, moon, or more specifically your rising in either Taurus or Libra, this is going to have quite a lot of importance for you as well, because you are ruled, or you have a lot of connections to Venusian energy. So just know that that's part of it as well. You're not going to have a sun in Taurus with a Venus in Scorpio. It's not possible, but it is something that it's possible to have a Taurus rising or Taurus moon and have that Venus in Scorpio. So just be aware of that. And then, of course, the Libra sun with Venus and Scorpio, there's a lot of conversations there. I have spoken on that with the Sun and Libra videos, so make sure to check that out. If you do have your Sun in Libra, go watch that video as well in the playlist down below. But yeah, that's really the Venus thing that I really want to talk about before we really talk about specifically Venus and Scorpio. So yeah, so without further ado, let's talk about specifically what Venus means in Scorpio. All right, so we have Venus in the sign of Scorpio. So this placement is going to be one of the placements that Venus doesn't necessarily like to be in, because Venus is in a sign related to Mars. So it's going to be a little bit more uncomfortable because it has to really merge those two Venus and Martian archetypes. However, because of the fact that Venus is in Mars's sign, much like Mars in Venus's sign, it's going to actually really merge a lot of those masculine and feminine tendencies, and or the desires and the action used to get those desires. They're going to be really merged and kind of interwoven in a way that may be actually a lot more valuable. Now, the difference being, with this particular Venus placement in Scorpio, it obviously has scorpionic tendencies to it, scorpionic archetype to it, which is going to flavor this in a way that is a lot more intense, that we haven't really seen as it would be, you know, if we had Mars in Taurus, or if we had, you know, Venus in Aries. It's not going to be the exact same amount of difficulty. It's going to be a little bit more, only because the scorpionic tendency is really dark and intense and deep. Now, Venus in Scorpio, Venus is all about our love, our values, our relationships, and Scorpio wants nothing but the most intense and the most like deep and authentic and transformative stuff. And they really want to see the darkness and the depth of people, and really get to see the nitty gritty and be loved for all parts of themselves, and really love like their partner or whomever for all parts of themselves as well. So there is this aspect with Venus and Scorpio where there is a very much death till we part kind of thing. Those kind of like vows and things. There's a lot of like really intense till death do we part. Like that sort of phrase is very Venus and Scorpio, where there's this love that is all consuming, that wants to be, you know, kind of so deeply enmeshed with someone's soul in a way that is like the deepest, purest form of love. Now, with Venus and Scorpio, I mentioned this in the portion previous to this, but I do want to have a little trigger warning because we are going to be talking about things relative to SA, because Venus and Scorpio is one of the indicators that I have seen in many of my sessions that is indicative of those sorts of things. And the reasoning for that is because Venus is all about our love, our value, how we feel like we receive love, how we feel the value of ourselves and our body and all of those things, and how we want to love. And when it's in the sign of Scorpio, what tends to happen is the act of receiving love at some point was really unethical and really disempowering and really intense, in a way that the Venus Scorpio individuals needed to reclaim that in some way, shape, or form, and learn how to get better at getting their needs met and or seeing their value. And I think the thing is, with Venus Scorpio, it's a heavy topic because it's not something that a lot of astrologers are willing to talk about, because it is something that is the depth of stuff. It's really dark, it's really intense, it's really deep, but it's also where the most power comes from. And something I've said to many people that have Venus Scorpio is, no matter how your value was stripped from you, right? No matter how you were beaten down to feel like you don't have value, you don't have worth, those sorts of things, no matter how that may have been, how that may have come out, because it might not have been through SA, it might have been through financial disempowerment as well. There's aspects to financial stuff, or through, just relational disempowerment, where it's just abusive relationships. It doesn't have to be sexual. And the thing I say to everybody that has this placement is to understand that someone wouldn't want to take something from you or harm you or control you if they didn't realize how valuable you actually were, and if they weren't threatened by you, because they are threatened by whatever value you have inside of you that you can't quite see, but they see, and they're threatened by it, and they want to try and control it by put you under their thumb, or by abusing you, or assaulting you, or verbally abusing you, or controlling you, manipulating you, all these things. So relationships for Venus and Scorpio are very intense, and they can have themes related to, abuse, manipulation, things like that. And the thing about Venus Scorpio, this is one of those placements where just because you've experienced manipulation and abuse in relationships, or within like your love life, doesn't mean that you have to recreate that. In actuality, you should not recreate that. That's part of the Scorpio archetype, is about being able to go through and understand the power in going through a really difficult situation, a really disempowering, disastrous, really tough, and really, really hard situation that is really disempowering. But the power in it is to ensure that you don't do that, and you don't become like the person that hurt you, or the person that created that trauma, or created that issue. That's something that Venus Scorpio really is, that's their biggest gift, is to not allow themselves to be to be an abusive person that becomes an abuser, right? An abused person that becomes an abuser, like to not be a victim, and then after being a victim, then victimizing someone else, right? There's just a lot of stuff here that the Scorpio archetype is heavy, and Venus is supposed to be a light planet, supposed to be a light and fun and very nice and social and financially, helpful planet. But it is just, it's not, when it's in Scorpio, it's like, okay, I want to really see the value in really dark situations and really intense situations. And Venus is like, but I just want things to be okay and be fair and be peaceful. And Scorpio does not want that. Scorpio wants to look at all of the darkness and all of the crap and say, we have to go through this to find the beauty. You have to find the beauty in the darkness. You have to find the value in the darkness. You have to find your worth in the darkness. And that's really, really hard when the world or your circumstances or your trauma is telling you that you're not valuable enough, or you're not worthy enough, right? And in relation to finances as well, there can definitely be some interesting financial difficulties with this, where there's almost like a never-ending debt cycle. But with Venus and Scorpio, the management of debt and the management of their finances and their sort of like credit card debt. These are people that can have very good relationships with debt, meaning that they understand the power of utilizing debt, utilizing credit as well. There's a lot of credit scores here in America. But it's understanding the credit game, understanding the kind of investment game. There's a lot of power with that with Venus and Scorpio, of being able to enjoy, investments and stocks and working with people's money and working with large sums of money as well. So there can be something there because Venus and Scorpio, it's all about really seeing the deep value that you have. And what's typically going to happen with Scorpio is you're going to consistently be given more power. So this is, like I said, where people that may have, like a great amount of resources that they're managing for others, but they don't have that same amount of money, right? So like, for example, actually, my own father has this placement. So this is actually a really good example because my father, he has Venus in Scorpio, and he manages the finances for a very large chemical company. And these are budgets of millions upon millions of dollars that he is managing and allocating those funds. And we're not, destitute. We're not at that point by any sort of means, but he doesn't have that much money in comparison to the $5 million, $10 million, $20 million budget that he has to work with at all times. But the thing about Venus and Scorpio, as they've gone through and they've significantly been exposed to more and more forms of wealth and more expressions of wealth, either in the physical, tangible sense or in the relational sense, that is when they'll really, on an internal level, really solidify their value, because they'll know what their value is, they'll know what their worth is, they'll know what they're willing to pay off, what they're willing to make, and how much they're worth, and how much their time and energy is worth. So these can be very hardworking people because they want to reclaim their value that was taken from them, or to prove some sort of deep sense of empowerment that they're really searching for, that was stripped from them for whatever reason, whether it's by financial difficulty or by relational difficulty. So it's a really, really powerful placement. Venus Scorpio has so much that it is capable of creating financially. And the thing about Scorpio placements, this has been such a interesting week to be recording this for me, and it has been quite a difficult week to record this. But the thing about Scorpio placements is they have such a power to it. They have such a power to it that is so transformative and is so capable of beyond richness. And that's the thing. Venus and Scorpio can be super, super wealthy when they are capable of seeing the value of their own survival, of what they've went through, what they've survived, and be able to transmute that pain, be able to transmute their difficulty into some form of art, into some form of something that can make them money. Because the transformation process, the kind of taking pain and turning it into gold, or kind of the Midas touch, is very much something that we could see with Venus and Scorpio, of taking their really difficult circumstances and turning it into something that is very, very powerful. That's the Scorpio archetype in general. But with the Venus here, this is literally your value, your morals, your ethics. So there is definitely an ethical kind of fine line here with Venus and Scorpio, because like I said, there is going to be, with all Scorpio placements, you're going to see the unethical use of of the things relative to that planet. So this is going to be people using money in very unethical ways, as well as people having very unethical relationships, right? So just being aware of the fact that that's something that you're going to have to see and experience, so that you can see the full range of what money and relationships can be like. And in turn, what you in yourself can actually be valuable for. There's a lot of value that you have inside of you that is untapped, and it's untapped because you have been so beaten down in so many different ways. Now, if you do have your Venus in Scorpio, obviously look to your Mars placement as well to see what else is going on with this chart, to see kind of how you are fighting for your value, and how you can really transmute that, and how that process may look for you. So just know that that's part of it. Transmutation process is part of this whole Venus Scorpio story, of being able to create something out of the lack of value and the lack of something. So this is where you'll see someone that will go from the extremes of homelessness to extreme poverty to extreme success. That's something that Scorpio loves, extremes, and because it wants to give you the full range in such a larger than life sort of way, so that you can see the power in whatever it is that planet is relative to. So like I said, this is financial intensity, where it's okay, like it's a intense poverty, but then an intense richness. And that's through the process of them transmuting and facing themselves, looking at themselves, and really turning this into something, into pure gold, really, into gold that is past what they even thought they could be. And that's where they have to do a lot of introspective work. There's a lot of need to look within themselves to see what their value is, and see the value of all the shit that they've gone through, all the shit that they are going through, all the darkness and the depression and the issues and the heaviness that comes with a Scorpio placement, and a difficult Venus placement at that. And being able to say, okay, there's a reasoning for this, and I might not know that, but I just have to keep persevering and keep persevering. Once again, looking at the Mars placement will help you understand how you go with persevering and how easily you do that, as well as the Venus house placement is going to tell you where this area of life is going to kind of be. But in general, there is a lot of financial support from other people, and the more you're willing to share with other people your darkness, your depth, your vulnerability, the better off you're going to be. When you're willing to do that, when you're willing to show how vulnerable you are and allow all of you, the dirty parts of you, to also be loved as well. Like all the parts of you that feel like they're not meant to be loved or they're unlovable, those are the parts that need the most attention. And if you have a Venus in Scorpio, know that sharing that, as hard as that might be, is empowering. It's not giving power to it when you talk about it and you share it. It's actually really vulnerable, and it's really hard to do that, but it is something that ultimately will allow you to love yourself even more, and love the life that you have lived, and the life you will continue to live, that is only because you are willing to address your own darkness and your own wounds and talk about it and share it. And that's been that Scorpio is all about wounds and the purification process and poisons and toxicity. It's all about getting rid of those things, and there's beauty in that process, and it's so purifying, and it's so rejuvenating when you go through the darkness, go through the difficulty, go through the issues, and then come out the other end and say, I'm worth it, I got this, I struggled and I survived, and that was what gave me the power. Because some people don't have the struggle in ways that the Venus Scorpio may, as it relates to finances and relationships. So know that your relationships and your finances are going to be this kind of up and down intensity, and a lot of psychological kind of just stress is going to be connected to those areas. But ultimately, you are going to be very, very powerful if you are willing to look deeper within yourself and see the value of all of that stress and all of that difficulty and all that stuff, because you can give that value to other people. You can turn your life in a way that is capable of providing so much value to other people that only if you're willing to share vulnerably and openly about your struggles and your issues and your darkness and your trauma in a way that is empowering. It really is. It truly is. There's so much value you have within you that comes from the difficulty, the struggle, the darkness. There's so much untapped potential in Scorpios and Scorpio placements that I think it's so important for those that have Venus in Scorpio or Venus-Pluto aspects to know that. I get so many Venus-Pluto aspect people. That is the most common aspect that I get personally. And it's something that they're looking for such intense validation, and this is what I'm trying to get across for those of you that have Venus Scorpio, is you are extremely valuable. There is so much inside of you that you don't even understand how valuable you are, and that's because you're naturally fearful of expressing those darker parts of yourself and exploring that, because for whatever reason, those parts of yourself may have been muted or not allowed, or seen as dirty and not valuable or taboo, or we don't talk about that. So know that that's something that the Venus here really, really wants to express, and it wants to express its value and its beauty, because there is beauty. And the thing about Venus and Scorpio, there is such a light to it that is undeniable in a way that only Scorpio placements can understand, because it's it's really the imagery of like growing through dirt and growing through that darkness and that process and the metamorphosis process of like killing yourself in regards to the butterfly, and really becoming and releasing all of that so that you can become whomever you're asked to be. And that's the thing, Venus and Scorpio, you can have so many different changes in your financial life and your relationship life that lead to you having very, very beautiful relationships in a lot of ways, and beautiful financial life in a lot of ways, because that's what Venus wants. It really wants that, but it wants you to understand that the darkness and the difficulty is part of really having such a beautiful life. A lot of people don't understand that that is what really truly gets a lot of people where they are meant to be. And many people with Scorpio placements are going to disagree with that, because they've experienced the opposite. They've experienced people that have done it unethically, which is very true, and it happens. But where do you think that desire came from, right? Where do you think that desire for them to want to be better and fight for more and get more money and get more relationships and have more, things, that desire came from somewhere, darkness. And the thing is, a lot of people that go towards those things are doing it unconsciously. And I think with Venus Scorpio, it requires you to be conscious of those things and see that people are doing things unconsciously for money or unconsciously for relationships. And you are kind of forced through the difficulty and the disempowering things that you've dealt with to look at them consciously, to look at your money consciously, to look at your finances consciously, to look at other people's value consciously, what you're sharing with other people very consciously, how you're making money, how you're going and building these relationships. Be very conscious and aware of them, and be vulnerable. That's what's going to give you the most value in this world, and it's so beautiful. And I love the Venus Scorpio placement. If you have this placement, I would love to hear from you. I love this. I want to talk way more about this. I wish I could talk about Venus Scorpio for hours upon end, because it's one of my favorite placements. As a Mars Scorpio individual, this is one of my favorite placements. And like I said, I get quite a lot of them in my own personal readings. And if you have anything in Scorpio, I would love to hear more about this. Obviously, of course, you have Venus Scorpio. This video is for you, so I'd love to hear that. Yeah, and I think there's so much power here in so many different ways. So yeah, and if you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe. All those things are going to help me. Yeah, the Venus Scorpio, you guys have such a power, such a beauty to you that I wish you could see in the ways that some of us do that have been through that darkness. There's so much value and so much beauty in stuff that we don't want to look at, and it's actually necessary for a lot of life. Is the shit, right? The fertilizer, the dirt, right? The darkness, all the things that give us beauty and give us life had to come from some sort of, disempowerment, right? And there's beauty in that. So that's all I'm going to say for that with Venus and Scorpio. I'll see you at the next part. We talk about specifically what it means to have your Venus in the 8th house. So we have Venus in the 8th house. So this house is going to be all things related to intimacy, related to the trust of someone else, related to how deep we can go with someone else. So when we see Venus here, this is going to indicate that there's a lot of natural value that we're going to get when we start going towards these things, when we start trusting people, when we start merging with people, when we start getting support from other people, when we start working with their finances, with their money, with their resources. Venus in the 8th house will naturally find value in those sorts of struggles, in those sorts of darker things, similar to Venus in Scorpio, except this is more in the sense of like in-laws, getting married. There is a sense here also with getting prenuptial agreements. So if you do get married, make sure you have the finances really squared away. There could be some sort of interesting stuff related to joint bank accounts with the 8th house, as well as taxes, as well as anything that's managing people's money. So you could make a lot of money through managing people's money. That's kind of a thing that Venus does here in the 8th house. You could also make a lot of money through intimate means with people. You could see this as something that is really allowing you to make a lot of beauty in the world, right? You could get a lot of loans. It's about what you do with other people's money. That's really the thing here. And Venus here is actually going to help the situation in a lot of ways. If you do have like a Venus ruled chart, so if you are a Taurus rising, Libra rising, or Taurus sun or Libra sun, or moon, or you have like heavy Venus energy in your chart, this is going to have kind of a lot of importance as Venus placement here. So just know that that's something that is really prominent. Also, if you are born at night, this Venus placement is going to have a lot more prominence too. You would kind of have to have your sun in the 6th to be able to really have this, so it wouldn't really necessarily be super common to have Venus in the 8th house as a night chart, simply because it would be right before Venus goes retrograde anyway, in that regard, or Venus will be retrograde in that way. But my point is Venus in a night chart is going to have a lot more importance anyway. But it's not common to have that with Venus in the 8th as well. So just know that's the thing there. But there is a natural value in being able to work with other people's money and people's finances, other people's energy, resources, psyche, trusting people, you know, getting loans, getting grants, getting scholarships. Those are things that Venus can do in both Scorpio and in the 8th house. There's this value of kind of merging of resources and seeing that you can make money through that process. You can make money through working with other people. You can make money through taking money from someone and giving it to someone else, or utilizing it in a different way, utilizing someone else's resources in a way that they didn't think of, right? That's something I think is really powerful as well, is utilizing other people's energy, resources, finances, you know, voice, morals to your own advantage in a lot of ways. That's something we can see here. Now, Venus in the 8th house does have a lot of different ways that it will represent, especially considering that Venus can be in a bunch of different signs here. I have made Venus videos for every planet prior to this. So I've done Venus videos for both Mars placements, both Venus placements, both Mercury placements, and the Sun and Moon. So if you have Venus in any of those signs, feel free to check out those videos and playlist down below. And then obviously I didn't do Venus in Sag or in Sag, Capricorn, Aquarius, or Pisces yet. So those are the only ones that I'm really going to kind of go into a little bit more here. But overall, Venus in the 8th house is going to have a lot of power to it. So I would, like I said, I'd recommend going into more of what Venus is specific sign based. If you have anything prior to Scorpio, check out those videos for a little bit more context to kind of help you figure out how to put this back together as well. But I'm going to try and be really, really brief on this. I'm not going to try and go too far in this before I go to the Jupiter and Saturn of it all with Venus in the 8th house. But Venus in a Martian ruled sign obviously is going to have a little bit of difficulty here. So there's a fighting for finances, fighting for value, fighting for intimacy here, where you can almost go and want to be closer to someone, want to merge with someone, want to work with their finances, those sorts of things. Venus in its own sign, either Taurus or Libra in the 8th, is going to have a lot of power here. So there is going to be a lot of importance as well with this particular placement here of like learn how to work with people's money, work with people's finances. In its own sign, in the 8th house, there is a sense of being able to work with people's finances and therefore make a lot more money through that process because your own Venus is placed in that 8th house and it's in its own sign. So it's able to get a lot of value from that. Venus and Mercury's ruled signs here are going to have a lot of information they're going to pass from other people and to other people. A lot of like contract signing, lots of like legal documents, learning how to help people with that process, as well as kind of different consulting things as well. Financial consulting, financial kind of management can be a part of this as well, both with Venus in its own sign and then Venus in Mercury's sign here. Venus in the Moon and the Sun sign here, this is going to be a lot of light that is then illuminating people's things here. So there is a lot of stuff. Overall, with Venus in the 8th, there's a lot about working with other people's money that can be really advantageous for you. Venus in Venus in Leo in the 8th can definitely have more of like a sex worker vibe to it as well as Venus in Scorpio in the 5th can have that too. And work with people's money and kind of like having it be joyful, or even something with speculation doesn't have to be sex. It can just be something that's really joyful and really enjoyable, which can be stocks, speculation, gambling, games, make money through games, money through other people's games and working with that. But with it being in the 8th house, this is almost like working for hedge funds, working for penny stocks, stuff like that as well, like working on kind of gambling, some sort of gambling aspect with people's money, like kind of Wolf of Wall Street kind of energy too with that. And then Venus in the Moon sign, this is going to be a lot of family assets, a lot of family values, a lot of family resources are going to be given to you. There's a lot of value the family then immediately provides for you. A lot of private value too. A lot of ancestral value, a lot of like inner, deeper value there. And then finally, Venus in Jupiter sign or Venus in Saturn sign. This is going to have a lot more abundance, a lot more opportunity here in the 8th house, where there is a lot of faith and optimism and things like that. So Venus with Jupiter here in the 8th there's a lot of faith around these things. So this is where you might see someone that becomes a mortician or someone who teaches about death or teaches psychology, someone who could have like a very rich psychological knowledge and rich knowledge about issues and become a therapist. Therapist is very eighth house as well, very much psychic too, eighth house. So any with Venus here, there could be a lot of money through those means, through kind of working people's energy, working with those sorts of darker occult things can make you money with Venus in the eighth house, as well as Venus in Scorpio. But Venus in Jupiter's ruled signs, so like I said, in Sag or in Pisces, are going to have a lot of opportunities that they're going to be able to teach for others or teach through others. And there's a lot of mentors here too. There's a lot of financial mentors or business mentors, business partnerships. There's an aspect with this of kind of foreign partnerships as well. Foreign trade can be a thing that can be really successful for Venus in the eighth house here. And then Venus and Saturn ruled signs. This is obviously the business stuff. This is also kind of working for hedge funds in a way, but this is the one that goes and gets the loan and then really has to pay a lot of debt off. Because with Saturn in there is a really longer kind of commitment. So longer investments, a lot of like 401ks, a lot of things that are relative to that sort of doing business, long-term investing, really long-term investing. Like I'm talking about you've had to really, really slowly build and make a habit of that, of building something very, very slowly in the eighth house, but it is valuable. So this could be like investing in something that is beyond your time on either end, right? Meaning that it's either coming from your ancestry or something that's super futuristic as well with the Aquarius side of things. And being able to invest in that and see the value in that and see the value that holding on to that thing can help you, especially because it's Saturn. There is a sense of holding on to something, holding on to resources of others or to things that are valuable. Like I said, there's a sense of something from your past or some asset or some heirloom in the eighth house. And that's also true for like Venus in Cancer in the eighth house too. There's like this family heirloom energy, kind of richness from the family. But Venus in Capricorn also has that too. But this is more on like, here's a family business, or here's like this really old kind of trading cards or old vintage things that you then get and then can use to make money. There's a lot of stuff there, especially if we saw like Venus in Cancer with Saturn in Cancer. That would be like a lot of family heirlooms that are really, 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 really rich. That'd be a really interesting chart to see. So there's that aspect there. And that's funny because actually Venus, and now that I think about Venus Saturn conjunctions in Cancer, I'm fairly positive that Donald Trump actually has that. It's in the 12th though, it's not in the 8th, but interestingly enough, it's like the same like family, lots of money, here's just a bunch of money, right? And what do you do with it, right? Now, Venus in Aquarius as well, it's that futuristic stuff. This could be a lot of speculatory things, but it's also like investing in trends, investing in like longer term things, investing with someone, investing in peer-to-peer lending could be a thing that you can see here with Venus in Aquarius in the 8th house, or grants, or social movements, and kind of investing in those things, investing in nonprofits, investing in not as much in like churches and things like that, because that can also be Venus. Jupiter signs can have that as well. Venus in Sag and Venus in Aquarius have a little bit of the similarities in like how they're philanthropic in some sort of ways. They have this sense of wanting to teach through their money, teach through what they're doing, and have an optimism to it. Venus in a Saturn ruled sign just has a lot of responsibility with their finances that they need to work through. So just being aware of that is definitely a part of this process. And seeing how deep you can merge with someone and their finances, their value, their work, those sorts of things are something that we'll see here with the 8th house Venus. And overall, the thing about 8th house Venus is a lot about the relationships. It's a lot about the relationships and intimacy and seeing how deeply you can connect with someone. And yes, there is financial aspects 100%. Like that's very much a thing here, but it's also about how deep you are allowed to, allowing yourself rather to connect to others, and how allowing yourself to be vulnerable and share those things and have those harder conversations. Because the thing is, Venus in the 8th house, Venus in Scorpio, it's so taboo to talk about money. Sometimes it really is, and it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. It's something that Venus and Scorpio need, and the 8th house both need to come to terms with, that's part of their own journey, is how to talk about money, and not just money, but things that we don't talk about, right? Things that we're not meant to like share, really. Like, they're like, oh, we just don't talk about that, right? We just put it under the rug, right? There's a lot of power in having those conversations, and of course value and also money you can make from having those difficult conversations. So think of, like I said, therapists. Think of people that are consultants of businesses and deeper things, and addressing really heavy things people don't want to look at, right? Venus and Scorpio, Venus in the 8th, they're both things of dealing with other people's crap, essentially, and turning it into other people's, into your own treasure. The Venus in Scorpio, Venus 8th, is also that whole phrase of one man's trash is another man's treasure. It's very much that process of seeing the value in that darkness. That's more relative specifically to Venus Scorpio, but it is still true for Venus in the 8th house, where there is a lot of value you can see from someone else's things. And you can also get a lot out of thrifting and all those things. That's also true for Venus and Saturn ruled signs too. There's a lot of thrifting energy to that. But we'll get to that when I actually start doing the Venus Saturn videos. But yeah, there's a lot here. I think there's so much that we can say with Venus in the 8th, but overall it's about seeing the value that you can bring to someone and how much value they can give to you as well. And there's kind of that give and take there. In-laws are going to be a really big thing for Venus in the 8th, more so than Venus in Scorpio, and working with other people's financial bank accounts, really emerging bank accounts. Working in banking can be a big thing as well. I see that a lot, people working in banking with Venus in the 8th. So yeah, if you have Venus in the 8th, I'd love to hear how this placement has played out for you. And also, of course, the other thing I want to add is if you have your Venus in the 8th house, you really want to look to the ruler of that Venus as well. So if you have your Venus in Mercury ruled signs like Gemini or Virgo, make sure to look to your own Mercury to see what's going on with that. Or if you have Venus in a Mars ruled sign, look to Jupiter, things of that nature. Going to give you more context for this. And if you guys like how I talk, you like how I read, you like that stuff, feel free to reach out to me. My stuff's down below to book with me, any of those things. Obviously, like, comment, share, subscribe. All those things do help me because it's what I do here on YouTube. I love doing this. I love giving my knowledge. I love exploring this and allowing myself to take the time to go through and explain this to you and show you what I've learned in little bite-sized moments here. I know these are bigger bites because they're longer videos, but still in moments that are able to be here to help you all learn about your specific placements. And the Scorpio placement, Scorpio week, 8th house week, is very much an intense one for sure. So I appreciate you being here and listening to this, and I hope this video helps you or helps anyone that comes across it. Whether you have Venus Scorpio, Venus 8th house or not, I hope this video just helps people and finds the people that need it. I love what I do. I appreciate my ability to be able to do this and the privilege I had to be able to speak on these things. And I hope that this gave you some solace, some peace, some understanding, and helped you see yourself more truly to who you could be and who you can be, who you're capable of being. So thank you so much once again for being here. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.